The audience was laughing. The cameras were rolling. And for a few seconds, nobody inside the studio realized they were about to witness one of the most uncomfortable live television moments of the year. What started as a normal late-night interview slowly turned into a tense exchange that viewers online couldn't stop talking about. Subscribe to The Truth Narrator, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Jon Lovett wasn't just another celebrity guest appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live. He was already a major political voice in America, a former Obama speechwriter and co-host of the hugely popular political podcast Pod Save America. Known for his sharp humor and strong political opinions, Lovett had built a reputation as someone comfortable speaking openly on controversial topics. Jimmy Kimmel had also changed over the years. Once known mainly for comedy and celebrity interviews, he had increasingly turned his late-night platform into a space where politics and entertainment mixed together. That combination made this interview feel different before it even began. At first, everything seemed relaxed. Lovett joked about Washington, D.C., political events, and strange encounters involving politicians and media personalities. The audience laughed comfortably, and Kimmel responded with his usual casual humor. For a while, it felt like a normal late-night conversation, but then the tone slowly shifted. Kimmel started steering the discussion toward political tension in America, public responsibility, and the growing hostility surrounding political discourse. The laughter inside the studio became less frequent. Lovett's answers became more careful. Even his body language changed slightly as the conversation became more serious. And then came the moment viewers replayed online again and again. Kimmel asked whether public figures, media personalities, and political commentators had done enough to speak against dangerous political rhetoric and rising hostility in the country. The room suddenly felt quieter. Lovett paused before answering. It wasn't a dramatic silence. Nobody shouted. Nobody argued. But because the interview was happening live on air, that brief hesitation felt incredibly real. There were no edits, no second takes, and no way to smooth over the tension. Viewers could feel it immediately. Lovett eventually responded thoughtfully, saying that leaders and public voices had a responsibility to clearly condemn violence and avoid adding fuel to division. Kimmel listened carefully, occasionally trying to lighten the mood with humor, but the atmosphere inside the studio had already changed. What made the moment so powerful was how controlled it remained. Modern audiences often expect televised confrontations to involve screaming or chaos. This was different. The discomfort came from the pauses, the careful wording, and the feeling that both men understood the seriousness of the topic unfolding in real time. Within hours, clips from the interview spread across social media. Some viewers praised Kimmel for refusing to keep the discussion superficial. Others criticized late-night television for becoming too political. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: the tension felt genuine. And that authenticity is exactly why the interview stayed memorable. It reflected something much larger happening in America at the time. Politics, entertainment, comedy, and media were all blending together in ways audiences had never seen before. Public figures were no longer expected to simply entertain. They were expected to respond to serious national issues too. For Jon Lovett, the interview reinforced his image as someone willing to engage in difficult conversations publicly. For Jimmy Kimmel, it showed how far late-night television had evolved from simple comedy into something more unpredictable and emotionally charged. Years later, people still remember the interview not because of scandal or outrage, but because viewers witnessed something rare on television, a completely unscripted moment where tension slowly took over the room. Subscribe to The Truth Narrator for more unforgettable celebrity interviews, live TV confrontations, and shocking moments that change public perception forever. Because sometimes the most powerful moments on live television are not the loudest ones. They're the moments when the laughter suddenly disappears. Before Jon Lovett ever walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, tension was already surrounding political media in America. The country felt divided, angry, and emotionally exhausted. Every interview, every joke, and every public statement from political figures was being analyzed online within minutes. And Jon Lovett understood that pressure better than most. As a former speechwriter for President Barack Obama and co-host of Pod Save America, Lovett had become one of the most recognizable voices in political commentary. He was known for mixing humor with sharp criticism, which earned him both loyal supporters and strong critics. To many viewers, he represented a new era where politics and entertainment were no longer separate worlds. Jimmy Kimmel had gone through a similar transformation. Over the years, Kimmel moved far beyond celebrity gossip and comedy sketches. His monologues became increasingly political, especially during moments of national crisis. He openly criticized politicians, discussed gun violence, healthcare, and political extremism, and turned his late-night platform into something more serious than traditional entertainment television. That's why this interview carried more weight than a normal celebrity appearance. Both men represented larger conversations happening across America. And once the interview began, viewers could slowly feel that tension building underneath the humor. At first, Lovett seemed relaxed. He joked about Washington, D.C., political parties, and awkward encounters involving politicians and media insiders. The audience laughed easily, and Kimmel matched his energy with casual jokes and playful reactions. But then Kimmel gradually shifted the conversation. Instead of staying focused on funny stories, he began asking deeper questions about the political climate in America. The topic moved toward public anger, political hostility, and the growing fear surrounding violent rhetoric in politics. That's when the atmosphere inside the studio noticeably changed. Lovett leaned back slightly in his chair, listening more carefully now. His responses became slower and more measured. The audience laughter started fading between answers. Even Kimmel's tone became more serious. Then came the exact moment people would later replay online. Kimmel asked whether public figures, including media personalities, podcasters, and political commentators, had done enough to lower the temperature in American politics. For a brief second, Lovett paused, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he understood how serious the question really was. The silence inside the studio suddenly felt heavy. And because the interview was live, viewers experienced that pause in real time with no editing or background music to soften it. Lovett eventually answered carefully. He explained that political violence and dangerous rhetoric should always be condemned, regardless of political side. He also admitted that comedy and political commentary had become much harder in such a divided environment because even jokes could now trigger outrage instantly online. Kimmel listened closely without interrupting. For a moment, the interview no longer felt like late-night television. It felt more like two public figures trying to navigate a difficult national conversation while millions watched live. The audience reaction became quieter too. Some people clapped cautiously. Others simply listened in silence. The room no longer carried the easy energy it had at the beginning of the interview. And that's what made the moment unforgettable. Nobody shouted. Nobody lost control. But viewers could feel the discomfort building with every pause and every carefully chosen word. Social media reacted immediately after the broadcast. Clips spread across YouTube, TikTok, and X within hours. Some praised Kimmel for asking honest questions instead of keeping the interview superficial. Others criticized the growing seriousness of late-night television, arguing audiences wanted entertainment, not political tension. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. The exchange felt completely authentic. There were no scripted punchlines protecting the conversation anymore. The tension was real, and audiences recognized it instantly. What made the interview even more powerful was how relatable the discomfort felt. Across America, families, friends, and co-workers were struggling to discuss politics without arguments or emotional tension. In many ways, the interview reflected the same awkward reality happening in everyday conversations across the country. By the end of the segment, the mood inside the studio had changed completely from where it started. The laughter was softer, the smiles looked more restrained, and viewers watching at home knew they had just witnessed something very different from a normal celebrity interview. But the biggest reaction was still coming. Because once clips of Lovett's pause and Kimmel's question exploded online, the conversation surrounding the interview became even larger than the interview itself. And suddenly, one live television moment turned into a national debate about comedy, politics, and the future of late-night television itself. Subscribe to The Truth Narrator, because Part 3 reveals how this tense on-air exchange changed public conversation long after the cameras stopped rolling. The moment the interview ended, The conversation didn't stop inside the studio. In many ways, that's when it truly began. Within hours, clips from Jon Lovett's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live started spreading across social media. Viewers replayed the exact moment Kimmel asked his question about political responsibility and public rhetoric. People analyzed Lovett's pause, his expression, and the sudden silence that filled the room before he answered. What made the clip go viral wasn't shouting or scandal. It was tension, real tension, the kind audiences instantly recognize because it feels unscripted and human. Some viewers praised Jimmy Kimmel for refusing to keep the interview shallow. They believed late-night television should challenge public figures instead of simply entertaining audiences with safe jokes and celebrity stories. Others defended Jon Lovett, saying he handled a difficult live conversation thoughtfully and calmly under pressure. But another debate quickly emerged online. People began questioning what late-night television had become. For decades, these shows existed mainly as entertainment. Celebrities promoted movies, comedians told stories, and politicians occasionally appeared for light-hearted interviews. But moments like this showed how much television had changed. Politics, media, comedy, and celebrity culture were now completely connected, and audiences could feel that shift happening in real time. Media outlets also reacted strongly to the interview. Some described it as one of the rare moments where live television felt genuinely unpredictable again. Others argued viewers were becoming emotionally exhausted by politics appearing in every form of entertainment. Yet even critics admitted something important. The moment felt authentic. That authenticity became the reason people kept discussing the interview long after it aired. For Jon Lovett, the appearance reinforces public image as someone willing to engage in serious conversations instead of avoiding difficult topics. Supporters respected his calm response under pressure, while critics argued political commentators themselves sometimes contribute to the same divisive atmosphere they criticize. Either way, the interview increased attention around him, and Pod Save America almost immediately. Jimmy Kimmel also faced intense discussion afterward. Some praised his ability to ask meaningful questions without turning the interview into a hostile confrontation. Others believed late-night hosts were becoming too political and drifting away from comedy altogether. But perhaps the most important reason this moment still matters today is because it reflected a much larger reality in America. People everywhere were struggling to talk about politics without tension. Families argued at dinner tables. Friendships became strained online. Even comedy itself started feeling risky. The interview captured all of that pressure in one uncomfortable but honest live television exchange. And unlike edited interviews or carefully managed public appearances, this moment happened with no script protecting anyone. Every pause, every reaction, and every shift in body language remained visible to millions watching live. That's rare in modern media. Most public conversations today are polished, edited, and carefully controlled. But viewers watching Jimmy Kimmel Live that night saw something different. Two experienced public figures navigating a serious national conversation in real time without knowing exactly where it would lead. And that unpredictability made the moment unforgettable. Years later, people still remember the interview not because someone won the conversation, but because it revealed how fragile and emotional public discourse had become. The silence inside the studio said more than any dramatic argument could have. No screaming, no insults, just a tense reminder that even comedy shows were no longer separate from the real-world anxieties shaping America. In the end, the Jon Lovett interview became more than a viral clip. It became a snapshot of a cultural moment, a time when audiences expected celebrities, comedians, and media personalities to answer serious questions live in front of millions. And whether viewers agreed or disagreed with the conversation itself, almost everyone remembered how it felt watching it happen. Because sometimes the most unforgettable moments on television are not explosive scandals or angry confrontations. Sometimes they're the quiet moments when the room suddenly stops laughing. Subscribe to the Truth Narrator for more unforgettable celebrity interviews, live TV confrontations, and behind-the-scenes stories that change public perception forever. Like the video. Comment your thoughts below and share this story with anyone fascinated by the moments television stopped feeling scripted. Because once the laughter fades on live TV, the truth becomes impossible to ignore.